and welcome. We're going to go over some happy news to start and then go over some very good news about our educational system here in Milford. So let's start with the first introduction to almost Grandpa.
I am Mike Walsh, Chairman of the Milford School Committee.
And now, officially, your first grandson.
Don't know the grandchild.
Oh, you don't know yet?
No.
Grandchild.
Grandchild.
Will be the grandchild of a Milfordian, right?
Yes.
I mean, I always joke with my daughter saying she became a real Milfordian as fourth generation Milford and lives within 2 miles of her mother. You're even closer.
Right, but not be a true Milfordian because I wasn't born in Milford and my wife wasn't. So even though we've been here 30 years, we're never going to be a true Milfordian.
How does it work now? How does it work now with the deliveries? I understand Dr. Capisi had to actually deliver you in order to
No, you could have Mastriani, Cicchetti, or Capisi.
Oh, okay.
You had 3 choices back then.
So what happens now?
I think they just rely on, are you at least 2 or 3 generations, and do you live within, I think that was put in by the mothers of Milford. Do you live within 2 miles of your mother? And Bob, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah, thanks for having us, Al. Bob Tremblay, Superintendent of the Schools in Milford.
You know, I don't think there can be a better way of saying that you're proud of the town and the school system than being proud that your grandchild will be raised in the town.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm very proud of the Milford Public Schools. I talk about it all the time, the great job that everybody does. And, you know, when I got reelected, Al, and I was fortunate enough to become chairman, I said to Bob, I said, we're going to spend a year talking about all the good things that we do in the Milford Public Schools, because there are a lot of great things going on every day and evenings in this district that we should all be so proud of.
And I want to go over them, but, you know, I've said from the beginning, Bob's got a biased view of the Milford school systems. You have a biased view. To me, the real judge of how well you two are doing and your team are all the colleges. Mm-hmm. You know, when my daughter Alexis applied to 8 schools and got into all of them, well, that kind of told me that a neutral party is saying Milford's pretty good as a educational system.
Well, the important thing too, Al, for people to know is that it's important that they're all getting into colleges, but they're all getting into colleges at different levels. So they're finding their own way. You know, we were just talking about the hospitality management program the other night down at the Doubletree Inn, and it was basically a travel fair worked by these students. And having the opportunity to talk to them, what they're looking to do is they're looking to go to college in that field. But if Bob hadn't put together that program, they would be children that are probably, you know, not sure what they're going to do, not sure where they're going to go to school, but now they're all focused and they know that they're talking about Johnson & Wales, they're talking about a school in New York. So they you know, it's because of programs like that that we offer, you know, that you see this kind of, you know, enrollment into colleges. But when you sit there at senior night and you watch as they post all the children and where they're going, they're all getting into all different kinds of schools, which again is very important to stay focused on the diversity that's in the Milford school, and what a great job they do.
And I think that's the biggest key, because we've always been worried that if you focus too much on how many kids did you get into the top 10% of schools, then you may forget that there's a whole bunch of kids who don't want to go and get a PhD in chemistry or biotech or, you know, whatever, but want to get into different kinds of schools. You know.
Right. We have really the challenge before me that I really enjoy, what gets me to school each morning and what makes the job so exciting is how can I create opportunities for kids where they can have their own path and we customize their learning, and more we're working toward that. So for example, we're trying to build a greenhouse as part of a greenhouse and garden initiative at Milford High School. In fact, your daughter's part of that program, and the students in our vocational program who are working that. But we have so many ways now to connect that to expand Milford High School's course offerings around botany and horticulture. We have teachers who are going to be getting some professional development at no charge to the town through Northeastern University this summer within their program and bring those skills back. I have a student who's an independent, I didn't even know we had this program at Milford High School until recently. We have a student who's an independent study architecture student who's now working on building his portfolio, and he has designed the greenhouse from soup to nuts. The entire structure, we've come up with a way to, you know, you can walk through the garden, and there's you know, plantings there, there's grow beds, so we can grow our own produce for the food services to supplement that program. That's exciting stuff. And this is a kid who wants to build his own architecture portfolio to go to school for architecture. So through Milford Public Schools, he has an opportunity now to build this, design his own. How many opportunities do kids have in school? So if I can do that for this child, what can I do for the next kid who wants to be a mechanic, maybe who can't get into to BBT for any number of reasons? Can I come up with a pathway for that student to actually have an apprenticeship? And that's what I'm trying to do, is reach every single one of our Milford High School students.
And I think that's so key, because I've brought up a number of times, there are people, I was fortunate to know one, who I always referred to as the most educated, uneducated man, my father. He had 4 years of school in Portugal, because in the villages, that's what you got.
Sure.
And then he had to go out and earn a living to help the family. When it came to academia, it just wasn't his thing. But put a tool in his hand, and boy, he was an artist. I saw him make tools, in a little forge, actually make a tool that he needed. It just amazed me. So you always worry. When we were kids, first class out of Milford High, there was this perception that if you were going to college, you went to Milford High. If not, you went to BVT to get a trade.
Right.
But Mike Fitzpatrick's done wonders there. But I worry, because if you're not in the top 10% of your class, you're not getting into BVT these days. So what happens to the people like my father, who, are brilliant in their own way, but not academically? So the hospitality program, I thought, was a fantastic avenue.
Right. But what happens, to answer that question, Al, today in the model that we deal with, what happens to them is unless, as Bob stated earlier, he finds a pathway, let's use automotive as an example, a pathway for these children to get into some kind of an apprenticeship program like the hospitality management. What they do is they really end up almost kind of suffering their way through high school, so that once they graduate from high school, then they'll end up in programs at Mass Bay where they can get an associate's degree in automotive technology, over in Norwood at UTI, which is a certificate program, but they've got to get through high school. One of the encouraging things the other night at the hospitality and management program was talking to these young people and having them say to me, math isn't my favorite thing and science isn't my favorite thing, but I know if I'm going to stay in this program, I've got to get through those classes. The maturity level comes up a little bit. They're excited about what they're doing. They know what they want to do, but they understand now that in life, there's compromises.
Right.
And it's very exciting to hear them, talk like that.
And when you think about it, you may know somebody who is helping mechanics. I wonder if we could find a local.
Yeah.
You wonder, is there somebody who could give guidance?
Yeah, we talk about it all the time at work. It's to the point now where we realize in this industry that we have to. I was in a meeting today with Chrysler. We have to grow our own. There's 6,000 to 7,000 short a year in the United States, just the United States. And what we need to do is come up with programs, get them in young, and invest in them, and basically
Then you'll get people like my father who give me tools.
Right.
Right.
Boy, like you say, okay, I got to put up, I will do the extra to get through math, to get through chemistry, because I get to do the hospitality that I love. I get to fix cars. I never understood it, because I look at an engine. The car I have has got the perfect engine. It's a big black plastic thing over it, and it's got 2 little holes. Because I can understand oil and wiper fluid.
Yeah.
But there's got to be somebody who can lift it.
Well, and somebody along the way, I think somebody inspires you. You've had a very successful career, continue to have, but somewhere along the way, somebody must have inspired you to do something, or something, and to get you motivated to come to school. It wasn't just an intrinsic drive to want to do well in math, or maybe it was.
I can tell you, what you just said, bring back memories of Uncle Paul. How many of us owe Paul Raftery so much, because sophomore year in high school, I was missing a lot of school. Just, okay, you show up, you take the test, you get, I got lucky and I'd get a B+ or an A, and who cares? He decided that wasn't good enough, so he would go from North Bow Street, drive to Mystic Lane, pick me up every morning. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, I've got to be here every day. That extra, and I couldn't disappoint him because he was going out of his way. When you say you take a little extra time to help that kid who wants to be a mechanic, to put him in touch with a Mike and say, hey, Mike, what do we do for this kid? That is just fabulous.
And that's, honestly, that's the best part of my job and Milford is a great place to do that kind of work because the community is small enough where you can get to know, I can get to know all 4,300 kids, 4,250. At the same time, I'm familiar with all the area businesses as well, being part of the Chamber of Commerce. So I can link up that networking. The more I spend time networking in Milford, I can create these pathways. So we have students now who next year will be doing with an asphalt company in Bellingham, just outside of Milford, obviously, but within the Milford Area Chamber of Commerce, looking to do an internship with WMRC Radio. To have Ed Thompson have an apprentice to do some of the reporting of meetings and actually give him some airtime. A number of the Certified Nursing Assistant Program, looking to develop a program there that will offset what BBT is offering for students who may not be able to get into that program, but to have a medical assistance program that we can create for kids next year.
Well, we used to have a small part of that because I remember I thought I wanted to go into medicine until somebody hooked me up at the old Milford Hospital. After 3 months there, I realized this is not for me.
Sure.
You know, I was in the ER. It was a fantastic learning experience. And the biggest thing it taught me was no.
Right.
That was so helpful.
As opposed to spending tuition for 4 years in college to find out you don't like that career choice.
You don't like it. And then Uncle Paul came back and he said, well, we got a problem. You've run out of chemistry. You've run out of biology courses. So he took 3 of us, shipped us off to Dean Jr. You know, similar. We were doing an internship. Yeah. We were interning as college students. And it was fantastic.
Look at our hospitality tourism program. Out of the 7 students who are graduating out of that program this year, leaving with a high school diploma, American Hotel and Lodging certification, and Hilton certification, right? On top of all that, out of the 7, 4 of them have either already landed jobs or are going to 2 or 4 year schools in that industry. And students who were 1 week into the program were already getting hired by the DoubleTree because they had this skill set. One person just got a raise already up the career ladder because of the ServSafe certification they just received. So here you are building a workforce already that's serving the town of Milford.
Fantastic.
Well, having been there the other night, Al, with Joe Marias, every vendor, because even though they were running the tables, or the booths, whatever you want to call them, there was somebody from the company there. Every single venue that I stopped at, I heard professionalism, polite, courteous, knowledgeable. I mean, think about it. These are 17 and 18-year-old kids.
These are teenagers, right?
Every single one of them. I had no identification on. I walked up to them and I said, hi, my name is Mike Walsh. Everyone responded back to me, good evening, Mr. Walsh, how are you? To the point where the last table down, I could tell this young gentleman was very shy. And when I introduced myself, he came back and said, good evening, Mr. Walsh. And we talked a little bit. I said, I'm a member of the Milford School Committee. He said, I know who you are, sir. You know, and I was like, wow, he's not shy at all, you know. But everybody, what I look at when I'm talking to young people now, to me is important. You're looking me in the eye. You're not looking down. You're not looking distracted. Every one of them was focused. And I'm not just praising that program. I praise all the programs that, you know, are at the school. I think another program or 2 that are very important and very big and very successful at Milford High is art and the music department. I mean, every year when we go to the National Art Honor Society, and I said to them this year, you need to take some of this art and display it around town. You're talking about high school children, and really, they started educating us last year because, as Bob knows, we used to walk and say, well, that's a nice drawing, and you know, that's a nice picture. But last year at school committee, we started bringing them into the room, and on camera, we had them explain their picture to us. They're artists. Their mind is thinking of something when they're drawing that picture. So now we start walking down the corridor and we start saying to ourselves, what is he trying to do in this portrait? Because they really are trying to do something. But when you see that and realize the age group, it's amazing.
I remember when I really learned how much the Milford school system had taught my daughter, Emily, about art, was when we went to the Quai d'Orsay in Paris to see the Impressionists. And it was always a joke because I had really little interest in the Louvre except for the Impressionists. I could spend forever there. And as I'm going through, Emily asked me, do you understand the significance of this painting? And I'm like, excuse me?
That sounds like Emily.
And she starts walking me through.
Yeah.
You know, the Renoirs and the Van Goghs and the Monets, which are my favorite, and the difference between the style and the money. And I was like, you know, for a school system that everybody says doesn't teach a lot, wow.
Yeah, they haven't been in it.
Yeah.
People who have a perception that Milford Schools is somehow second to some other district, I challenge that person to take a walk with me and go through our schools and the kind of rich programming you see. I mean, most towns, through budget reductions over the years, they've lost arts programs, music programs. I mean, we offer so many electives in this area. It's incredible. You know, and we have just great opportunities for our kids to be creative. I mean, you know, you see in a lot of other countries are competing with people who are just these sort of mathematician, scientist type, but they lack what the United States of America brings to the table in terms of creativity, problem solving. They don't have those skill sets. Our kids have that, and they demonstrate it every day, and it's really something to be proud of.
I mean, look at the robotics program. You know?
Talk to me a little bit about that.
It's a program at the high school where the students actually build their own robots. They actually have I'd say about a 4-foot one.
Yeah, Mr. Robot. We bought Mr. Robot this year.
Is that the one that made the spinning top that?
No, that was just a small Lego EV3 system. The Mr. Robot stands about 5'5" or so. He's a full-size, fully functional robot. Yeah, that the kids have built, and just impressive.
They
So
built
he's the one that meets you at the door and says, "Talk to me about the robotics budget."
Like the butler. Well, we have a program that feeds into it. So we started the Stacy Middle School with robotics. It's an after-school program there. We're looking next year to bring that robotics model during the school day, give more kids an opportunity to get their get it to touch in with it. If a student's not able to stay after school or can't be part of that club, they're going to miss that opportunity. We want to expand that opportunity for more students. So we're moving into the STEAM direction. You hear a lot about STEM.
STEM.
Milford's really adopted the STEAM model where we have the arts as central to that. We don't want to miss those kids who want to do the drawing work, architecture. Our music and arts programs are so important and so central to Milford.
It's not even missing the kids who want to be artists, because that's critical. But me, who has no music ability, none whatsoever, no artistic ability, because everything I do looks like a Jackson Pollock, even when I don't mean it to. It just looks like a blur of, never mind. Having the appreciation, just having the knowledge to appreciate classical music. I love going to Claflin Hill. I have no idea how to play any of the instruments.
Right.
I could take any instrument and make it sound like you're pulling the tail off a small farm animal. I understand that.
Right.
But having the appreciation is just something that has served me throughout my whole life.
Well, that's Bob and I talk about it all the time. Like, we were at National Honor Society, and we don't bring in the whole band, but we bring in the string concert band.
For that one, we bring the orchestra. Yeah, for National Honor Society.
Oh, that is the orchestra.
That was the orchestra. Yeah.
And
it's chamber orchestra.
You sit there and you say, these are high school students. I mean, you think, you're honest to God, you would think you were Claflin Hill. I've been there. You say, this is absolutely amazing.
Well, I remember when they used to bring, was it the all-school orchestra night?
Oh, yeah.
And that,
the
to me,
concerts.
Was amazing, because you'd see the little tiny kids. And, you know, you're like, oh, God, I remember when my daughter sounded like that. And to us, it was Broadway. It was better than the BSO because it was your daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? But then you got to the high school kids and you forgot you were listening to teenagers.
Gave you hope, too, to say, wow, okay. If
these kids were good.
That's right.
You know? And I remember the first time you got up on stage as superintendent, waving your little baton.
Oh, yeah, when I connected.
Right? I had no idea what he was doing. I mean, he's up there waving away. But when I looked at the parents and the faces on them and how much they appreciated that, hey, by the way, the administration doesn't just care about one segment.
No.
You're there. Whether you were doing it right or not, nobody would care. We'll assume you were. But what you did right was put a sense of pride in a whole section of kids that were always ignored.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I always tell the story, the year that Bob went to Washington, D.C. with the kids, the following week we had 8th grade graduation at, I drew blanks.
Middle School
East.
Middle School East. And I happened to already be up on stage, and I'm looking across the gym, and I see Bob come in with his suit on, but he's got a red, what looks like to be a red T-shirt. And I'm like, well, It's different, but, you know, and he comes up on stage, and I'm kind of...
He's an academic.
Yeah, you know, and all of a sudden they call him, and he gets up and he whips his jacket off, and it's the red shirt that they all wore in Washington, D.C. Well, you could have seen a gym full of 8th grade students go absolutely bananas. And I said to myself, he had them.
Yeah.
And then he just spoke to them just like he was Bob.
So now we hear a lot about these kids from Texas, how we got in these immigrant kids and they're going to hurt my daughter or son's education. How do you respond?
I think it's an unfortunate view, actually. One thing you see about, I've been to flag raising ceremonies and cultural celebrations and international nights in Milford, and the number of countries that Milford has represented. They're all not necessarily represented by the mayor's picnic every year, and
the one you blew bugle at. You blew the bugle at my.
I did blow the bugle at your inauguration day. But it's what makes the community so diverse and so rich in so many ways with that diversity. The students who are coming here from the detention centers in Texas, they're coming here fully immunized, they're fully screened, they're coming here.
Bob, I think what people,
they're not a
the
threat.
talk is what they're worried about. It's not that they're a physical threat, because history has shown, I mean, I laughed when we had Chief O'Loughlin. I said, how ironic that all these TV newscasts we see about demonstrations about the police.
Oh, yeah.
And we had one in Milford, but it was for the police saying thank you.
Right.
So I don't think the security is the issue. I think what people are worried about is the teacher has so many heartbeats to dedicate to this class. If little Johnny comes in, who doesn't speak English, who's had no education, and she has to spend, or he has to spend, a disproportionate amount of time, what happens to the other kids?
Well, I think, Al, one of the first things that, needs to be really understood is that when they first came here, there was a lot of conversation they were sent. They weren't sent here. None of those children came here unsponsored. The federal government did not send them here, did not just open the gates, what some people were saying, and let them come here. They had family here, they had relatives here.
Well, they were drawn here because they had some tie to Milford.
They were drawn here because there's employment if they had older family, an educational system, affordable housing, all the things that Milford has offered for, I mean, you and I have had this conversation many times, back to the early 1800s. That's what attracted Milford
the
to
Irish,
people.
the Italians, the Portuguese, the Brazilians, the Ecuadorians, the Guatemala.
But they also understand, I guess very similar to you did, they understand that when they're in school, and if they're not trying, and they're not trying to get a good education, then they're not going to get anywhere here. So, they're in there every single day doing the best they can. What helps is, and yes, some of the teachers are under the gun with the program, with the children that don't speak English, but they're Milford teachers, and they're great teachers, and they became teachers because they wanted to make a difference in a child's life, and they rise above it. They rise above it, and they get pride.
But Mike, you can be objective, and you can logically evaluate anything in your business. Comes down to the grandchild Walsh. You'll never be objective. That's pure emotion. You see your daughter, your son, your granddaughter. Fundamental question. I've got a child at Woodland, and in comes these new kids. My education of my child going to go down because of it? That's the question.
Yeah, that is a challenge for us. As the numbers increase and the needs, you can only have one teacher in the room, or sometimes you have a teacher and a teacher's assistant, but you're still dealing with that ratio. Milford's done well to keep class size ratios really low. I think really low comparatively. You're looking at about anywhere from, say 20 to 25 on average, depending on the grade level. Those are very decent numbers to work with. But some of those challenges, so what we're trying to do is better prepare our teachers. We're giving them the training they need to help students whose first language is not English. And those kids are like sponges. They come in, the younger we can get them in our schools, the better they're going to be. And we have the data to show that these kids will go through the program with the support they need, and then they'll mainstream out, and we'll do very, very well. The biggest challenge for us is when students come in, and it's really called a SLIFE population, students with limited or interrupted formal education. A student coming in at 18 years old, 17, 18 years old to Milford High School, who's not been in any kind of education system for 10 years, who is not even literate in their own mother tongue, then trying to learn English, and then to still get a high school diploma, take MCAS, it's just really not fathomable. So we're really building that structure this year.
Bob, what do you say to the parent who says, is my kid's education going to get harmed because of it?
Yeah, I'd say no. I'd say the answer
That's
is
what they
simply
want
no.
to hear.
No, we're not going to educate. We're just not going to educate a child at the expense of another.
Right.
We
And that's
don't
the
do
most
business that
important
way.
message. I mean, we'll talk about budget in a minute, and we know you have too much money and not enough to spend it on. But when you think about it, one of the biggest issues was, okay, how do we fund the school system? You know, we always have the gripes and growls, and we'll go through about steps and lanes and chutes and ladders and all that. But at the end, you had kindergarten this year to deal with, and you had the ELL population. And let's face it, the town, there are kids. Now that they're living here in Milford,
The Milford kids.
you know, at the end of the day, you know, we've had the discussion about the youth center.
Yep.
Don't want to hear it. You know, they're no more special, no less special than any other Milford kid. You know, we had a need for athletics. Football kids needed a place. We built them a field, a stadium. Soccer kids, lacrosse, softball, and the same with the youth center. Different population, but I mean, Jesus probably would not be happy with me, but they're no more special, but no less special than the kids who play football, baseball, softball. They're Milford kids. These kids who have come in from Texas, frankly, you have the debate at the border. Once they live in Milford, they bleed Milford red, end of story.
In my experience in Milford, the town has always been very, very supportive of what we need for our kids and have delivered every time. I think that's what makes Milford so attractive and really the envy of many communities, besides the fact that everybody in this community seems to spend money like it's coming out of their own wallet, which is really important. And everyone's mindful of that. You know, the school department, even though we sometimes get the perception that we are the biggest draw on there's no perception issue, that's a reality. But the fact is that, the value of everyone's home in this community and surrounding communities is a direct correlation to the kinds of schools and education we provide kids. There's no question. That home value is important, the quality of a community, the reason why someone would want to move to Milford in the first place.
Why, I mean, we had this discussion while we were waiting. Why are we working if it's not for our kids?
Right.
At the end of the day, why are we working?
That's what it's all about.
You could stay home and play golf all day. I mean, think about it.
Yep.
I have to you say about the kids, I have to share a little reflection. Graduation's coming up, and I have a student that I knew. I've had the benefit of being in Milford for 17 years. I get to see a lot of these kids I was opening their ketchup packets, and now I see them, teaching, in our schools, working in the school department, to see that growth. But I had a student who asked me just recently, she said, I wanted to know if you would hand me my diploma on graduation day. You've meant so much to me in my life growing up, and you made me feel as though I mattered. And 8 years ago, when you became superintendent, you said that I want to hand you your diploma one day when you graduate. She said, I want to know if I can hold you to that promise.
Isn't it nice that you remembered?
And I couldn't even believe it. I was blown away. I nearly lost my mind just reading the email. I wrote back to her. And I'll never forget, because she was it was like a principal. I was principal at the time. And it was like the principal student of the week or whatever it was. And I had lunch. It was lunch with the principal. And I bought Chinese food for her. And she'll never forget that day. She'll never forget reminding me of that. And so I wrote back the email and said, I would be honored to hand you your diploma, but only once we have Chinese food first. And so we're going to have a Chinese meal again, here 8 years later. And it's that kind of, to be in the school department long enough to see that over the years and to make that personal connection with kids is just so important.
It's
every
pretty
kid matters.
Amazing when you think the average tenure of a superintendent in Massachusetts is what, 0.8 election cycles? It's like 2.5 years, because most school committees turn every 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here we are, how many years?
Wrapping up my 8th.
To me, when I thought of Raftery, Uncle Paul, he's still Uncle Paul. He always will be. And as he looks down on us, I hope he doesn't turn over in his grave, because we all still call him Uncle Paul. Because he really did make you feel like
He cared.
yeah.
He cared.
You could
thing right here.
feel it.
It's so
He cares.
important, and kids know that. Kids know if you care or not. You know, they know that. They're very smart.
And I mean, like, very shortly we have the French connection coming over.
Yeah, next week we have
Yeah.
our students, and I understand you're hosting. I don't know how many of
Yes.
them, but I think you were.
That was the Lydia Buckley going to my daughter,
Right.
saying we're desperate for host homes. What should I do? Lexi says, call my father. It wasn't call my mother.
Right.
You know, it was call my dad. Well, what can you do? You see somebody like Lydia busting her backside. You can't help but want to pay back to a school system that's done so much.
But you've always opened your home. You've opened your wallet. You've opened. You've.
Yeah, but Bob, it's still nothing more than paying back
Yeah.
what when I was a kid, what people did for me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was just amazed. Someday I'd love to see it in Milford, where Holliston just had this huge networking event where they had about 30 different people come in. How I got invited, well, because Harvard App is in Holliston, and talk about careers in science, careers in art, and how you get so many of the kids who had no idea that you don't have to be a bench chemist if you like chemistry.
Yeah, we've done that at the high school.
Yeah, and as when you reached out to me, we were going to explore more opportunities like that as well.
But you know what, Al, what's very important, and Bob touched on a little bit, just using myself as an example, you know, just having run for my 3rd term in school committee. My children are growing. As you said earlier, I'm going to be a grandfather. Being involved in the youth center because I care. Because if you can change one child's life, it's worth it. But working with all children to make things better for them so that like you didn't forget.
No.
When you get to your point of your life, you
You know,
turned
when you
around
look
and
at
started
somebody
helping.
Like Mr. DeJesus, you know, you look
Yeah.
at Sydney,
Yeah.
you look at Jen, you can see they care.
Yeah,
They really
absolutely.
look at these kids as their kids. You know, you go to the schools, and whether it's, you know, people like Jen Walsh, you know, and I see it in Lexi, they just love these special needs kids, the Best Buddies program.
Yeah.
I go to my calendar for Special Olympics, she's already written in every event. And so if you can't make it, that's okay. It's only the special needs kids, Dad. They don't need all the pictures. What can I say?
Yeah,
You know, you
Yeah.
got to want to help, and you get there,
yeah.
and you just see how much people put in and how much they care for all the kids.
Well, Bob had a great idea, and I think this will be our 3rd year doing it, and actually we kind of stumbled upon it when the TRC was redone. What people don't see are all the cables that are running on the floor like here, and we were giving awards. We used to bring in the basketball team,
Right.
And we were giving awards away, and instead of going to the end of the table, the poor kids were trying to navigate their way around the cables. So you know, we really felt awful. So Bob said, you know what? Why don't we try to go to their banquet? As many people as can come to their come to the banquet with all the children.
No.
Well, now it's become a tradition. We just like to have them come up to you and shake your hand, you know, and they get their award, and we're doing all the children. But to see the excitement in their eyes, that's what makes it all worthwhile. That's why we do what we do. You know?
Well, it's always amazing at how many Milford High graduates are back in the system.
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
You know, and I think part of what makes, I mean, you're coming close to a contract negotiation. The thing that I find telling is I didn't see anything in the local papers about school committee at war with teachers union. You know, and I have no doubt they're going to want to start with 99% raises. You're going to start with minus 99%, and somewhere in the middle, you'll come out with something that's reasonable. But you don't see the animosity, you know?
well, part of that is because, you know, and Attorney Jerry Moody, the town council, does a phenomenal job at
he
this.
really
He
does.
uses interest-based bargaining, and it's a very, I would say, non-traditional way of bargaining. It's basically you're all in a room, and you start out with your interest, you know, and you start at the very beginning, and then we had some long evenings, you know, but we set a time to it, and you basically and then you go from your interest to your options, and you just keep kind of moving things around the room, and people start understanding, you know what, I'm only seeing it through my eyes. I never really thought about that.
Yeah,
That's a valid
maybe
point.
management isn't so bad, or maybe
Right.
the teachers aren't so hungry.
Right.
Right.
I mean, maybe the teachers have a good point here, and you hear that dialogue out.
Right.
It's really eye-opening
So
experience.
putting you on the spot, we're going to have a contract?
My opinion, yes.
Going to be win-win for both sides?
I think so. You know, I think this whole process is, you know, we literally, for people who don't have the benefit of being in the room, because it's an executive session, I mean, it's, you have the, you know, a member of the school committee, you might have a teacher, myself, it's just all staggered. We're not all sitting together, we're not in
can't sit
teams.
together.
We're all staggered throughout the room, so you know you can't roll your eyes.
Yeah,
There's
it
certain
can't
ground
be
rules. You can't
blocks
be on
of
your
people.
Yeah.
You can't be on your devices texting one another. You know, what's he thinking about saying that? You know, it's really interactive. And what you find oftentimes is that what the problem they're trying to get resolved often isn't really what they had thought of as a solution in the first place.
Right.
The interest really sometimes is very different, and we found some ways around, and I think it is a win-win. I think there's a lot of wins for both sides here, a chance for us to really think about how we offer professional development to our staff and for our teachers to be compensated fairly for the work they do and recognized for that. So it's really a nice balance.
Well, I think that's the key. I mean, the problem is you're looking across at Milford people.
Right.
So it's not like you're debating in the abstract.
Right.
These are our neighbors. These are, you know, our kids' friends that all grew up.
Right. And also what comes out of that kind of interest-based bargaining is the passion. You know, when the teachers are really, you know, they're on a topic, or, you know, that they're passionate about, you know, you see that come out in them, you know, and you say, wow, that is really important to them, where, you know, I might sit there and say, well, you know, but when you see the passion that comes out of them in the teachers from education, it changes your perspective and say, geez, maybe I need to shift the way I'm thinking about this. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, and they have to see that, okay, no matter what, we have X dollars.
Right.
I mean, you get 62% of our budget, and only 47% of your budget is paid for by the state.
Right.
So at the end of the day, you know, and yes, we all have a soft spot for our kids, but we have to have a soft spot for our grandparents and the people on fixed incomes who built this town.
Yeah. But you know, Al, Bob made reference to it real quick. We went to the high school on a Friday for the raising of the flags.
Yes.
And every year they pick 3 different cultures and 3 different students, I should say, 3 different cultures, and they raise the flag of their country. This year, and I apologize, I don't know his name, but he was from South Korea. Jen Lancaster had him in 3rd grade. Couldn't speak a word of English. One of the greatest volunteers that we have at the youth center, next to the girl that just got the award from the United Way.
Oh, yeah.
He just got a 4-year ride to Boston College, and he wants to be a doctor. Okay.
I won't say anything, even though it's the other Jesuit school. I really do think highly of BC.
The girl was a beautiful young lady from Nigeria, and then the gentleman from Honduras. He got up, and he had no script. And he started to talk, and then he stopped. And I said, oh, he's not going to make it through this. And then he started. And he actually told the story of how his family was told he has a sister. Either the son goes or the daughter goes. They both don't go. And his sister said, send my brother. He deserves an education. His dream, again, in the top of his class, his dream is to go to college, graduate, get a job, and then send for his sister and her 2 children now to come live in the United States. If that doesn't touch you as a human being, right here in the Milford Public Schools.
But see, there you go. Those, you know, you say Nigerian, Korean. No, they're Milford.
Yeah.
You know, we all hold on to our heritage, but at the end of the day, you look at those kids and you say, wherever they came from, they're now ours.
Right.
They're part of Milford. They bleed Milford red.
Yeah. And I'm
And that's
proud of all of
something
them.
to be proud of.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You know?
And they're bilingual, many of them if not trilingual, many of our students. They all have their own very, very interesting story, you know, to get to know these kids. It's really, I mean, it's a great job to have. It's great work we do. You know, we have to fight with the finance committee every so often and plead our case. At the end of the day, we get into the fight, but then everyone's there to support us.
I'll never forget this teacher named Anne Marie Longo in Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
No, it wasn't. Back then it was, well, it was in Stacy. And I took French. And I couldn't stand French. And I remember,
Even though you lived in Paris.
well, but that was the ironic part, looking at her saying, you know, I don't know why I'm studying French. Nobody's going to speak French. I'll never use French. I came back from Paris, and somehow she remembered. And it shows you how much these teachers care, because she looked at me and says, do you remember when you said you'd never use French? Did you use any of it while you lived in Paris? But it's just amazing that, you know, 1 out of 1 million kids this one teacher had, and she still remembered, like you with the Chinese food.
Mm.
I think what's, and I talk about it every year, what's amazing to me is when Senator Bertinazi comes in to give away his award. And he, every year this is going into my 7th year, he opens the program up talking about his teachers that he had in high school. He remembers their names and what an influence they had on his life. And I mean, it's just like, this is amazing. This gentleman is, I don't know how old he is, but he's mid-70s. Yeah. He's still talking about teachers at the Milford High School.
You know, some of the teachers, Francis Jablonski, I remember when Alexis had him, I had him. And when I hadn't seen him in decades, I said, you know, I warned her you don't grade fairly. And he said, what do you mean? I said, you never gave anybody 100. You always found some nitpick way to take a point or 2 off. So I ended up, you know, always at a 97, 98. And he goes, yeah, I pushed you, didn't I? And he was right, because it infuriated me.
Yeah.
That you'd study that much harder to try and get that little bit. And he knew. And he cared enough to take the time to nudge everybody. And then here it is 100 years later, my daughter's in there, and sure enough, she's fighting for the same 2 points.
Yeah.
But he's pushing her. Without pushing, he's building that drive in her.
Right.
And that carries out across.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll tell you a great story, too, about for people that are concerned about the safety in the Milford Public Schools. This just happened to us. At Jen Walsh's Special Olympics on Friday, field day. Joe Ambruzzi from the Patriots was going to be the keynote speaker, and he was going to give the awards out. But they forgot to tell security that he was coming. So he gets to the high school, hits the button, comes into the kiosk. He has no identification of what he's supposed to be doing, doesn't know who he's supposed to be meeting, and so the guard said, I'm very sorry, I can't let you go. And so they have this Patriot trapped, right? And so finally they send text message down to the field, and Meg Balsito says, oh my, I forgot to say something. She comes up, and here he is, this monster of a guy, standing in there, and she said, I am so, so sorry. He said, no. He said, this is a phenomenal security system. It works. I told that woman who I was. You think she would have melted like ice cream and just say, oh my God, a Patriot, go.
Oh my God.
No. He had to stay there and wait for someone to come up, and he talked to Bob afterwards about it. He said, you should be proud of the security in this school.
Well, I mean, celebrity, Milford child.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. She's got the balance the right way.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, kindergarten program. A lot was said that the state cut the funding or might cut the funding. For a while, we believed they'd cut the funding. We cutting kindergarten?
Oh, of course
No.
No. We worked so hard. Remember all those years back? We worked so hard.
To get full day.
You get full tuition-free, full-day kindergarten for kids, and what a blessing that's been for Milford. We'll never go back on that. And it looks like the state is kind of finding their way.
They're going to pay it
to fund
But I think
that.
more importantly, when it was underwater, where they said 170,000 isn't coming your way, I never heard once, okay, we're going to have to cut kindergarten.
No.
Or cut half day.
No, we find a way.
That never was said, never.
No.
Well, the same with the ELL. I never heard yet. You know, your predecessor, Scotty, came and said, well, yeah, it was a surprise, and it stinks, but they're Milford kids, we'll find a way.
We'll deal with it.
That's right.
Absolutely.
It was interesting, Kevin McIntyre, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, he and I are trying to find some ways to make Milford just that next cutting edge. What can we do? With technology, everyone's kind of on the one-to-one initiatives, and so we're moving in that direction, a blended learning model where we think maybe one-to-one may be appropriate at some grade levels. We also think that maybe classroom carts of iPads might be more appropriate at a different level. We think it's not necessarily everyone has their own iPad. What we saw today was pretty mind-blowing. It's virtual reality in terms of education. and trying to build this now into our planning. So I today had an opportunity to dissect a human heart by wearing a set of 3D lenses and then everything interactive, and I was able to move lungs around, remove objects, and I had a little camera I grabbed, and I did. I went inside and saw all the parts of the heart, ventricles and everything. I could actually see inside, and I could, in the pen, the stylus I was holding was actually pulsating with the heartbeat. I had a chance to really, and I could rotate the heart, and it was like right here. It wasn't like on a two-dimensional screen. It was three-dimensional. I could look all around the heart, and unbelievable technology. There's only 2 schools right now in Massachusetts using this technology. I intend to have Milford be the 3rd.
That's wonderful, because
it's fantastic.
When we look at what we have to go through, you know, being involved in regenerative medicine to excise the human heart, and then actually, I mean, I still find it a bit Star Trek-y when after 3 days we've removed all the cellular components and you get this white translucent human heart. Now, I don't have the technology there. I have to walk around it to see it, but it's so rare to get them. I mean, it's not like you can give it to a high school kid, because even the surgeons are fighting to get enough human lungs, human hearts to do their research. That is incredible.
And I just saw it today. It was just introduced, and it's really cutting edge. And we're gonna work on some grants next year for fiscal 2017, and to bring more and create labs that are virtual reality. So you're really engaging and learning in such a different way. That's what our kids need. Our kids need to have that kind of hands-on experience.
Well, see, and that's the important thing, because when I think of special needs, you know, I've always said, you have kids who need a little extra help to get to their full potential. You know, Lexis keeps reminding me her job is to get every kid to their full potential. It'll all be different.
That's right.
With the special needs kids,
right,
the levels they'll achieve are different, but she feels, and she keeps telling me, her job is to get them as high as they can go. But then I think about the top 10%, and I never want to forget that we've got to culture our next Nobel laureate. And programs like this really make me excited.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, oh yeah. When you see the, you know, some of the programs that are being done for the, as you say, the top 10% of the kids in the AP classes they're in, blow you away.
You know, it's interesting, because I've had people ask me, how do you think, what should I do to get the best education I can for my child? And it's funny, I said, get involved.
Right.
I remember what is it? It's not the PTO, it's the school council.
Yeah, it's both, but school council.
When I got banned from school councils, I was on 4. Yeah, because once I get to the FinCom, you couldn't be on anything you funded.
Oh, okay.
But I remember I was still on Woodland. I mean, every time I went to, okay, guys, it's time for me to leave, it was like, no, stay one more term. But, you know, between Stacy, Woodland, Middle School East, and Brookside, I was on 4 at a time. But as much as I'd love to say I was doing it only for the kids, it was very self-serving, because I got to meet with the principal and a lot of the top teachers regularly.
Right.
And it really made a difference in my understanding to what I can do for my child. And I've suggested to a lot of parents, even if you can't make the commitment, it's one night a month, but even if you can't make the commitment of one night a month, go to the meetings.
Sure.
Even if you're not a voting member, we never discouraged any parent from coming in and having an opinion and helping us learn. But to me, that was the best thing I could have done.
That's great advice, because we really need parents to be partners with us. You know, we have the kids for 6 hours in the day, but the hours that they're not in school, a lot of them, of course, they're doing homework, they're working, and they're going to various sporting events or rehearsals or whatever it may be. Sometimes raising families, because many of these students actually do raise the family in our schools. But for parents to get involved and engage and make sure kids are getting enough sleep and monitor their cell phone use, let them get a good night's sleep. These things are buzzing all night long, and our kids aren't ever getting that kind of deep rest they need. Put the phones away, unplug, take some time. In fact, I'm going to challenge the entire Milford community. We're looking at
a no phone day?
It was gonna, well, we decided it. We had this big discussion. Judy Agnes, our nursing director, brought it up to me initially as part of a health and wellness committee that Mike is on. And the challenge, and I'm going to put this out, I have the little advertisement ready to go. From 7 p.m., we decided it would be best to do a 12-hour window, from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Not that long of a day.
No.
It's a half day. 7 p.m. on June 15th to 7 a.m. on June 16th. We're asking families, everybody, administrators, students, power down. No electronics, no cell phones, no television, nothing.
Can I watch my daughter's hands flinch?
It's going to be, people think 12 hours, big deal, they shouldn't have the phones. You take an adolescent's cell phone away for 12 hours, you'd be amazed.
My daughters still think I'm a dinosaur because when I walk in the house, I put the phone on the charger and I don't carry it with me.
Right.
Whenever I move around the house.
Well, one of the interesting things that came out of this, Al, is that there's a study, and all of us are guilty of it, but in particular children, they put the cell phone on their end table and then go to sleep. Well, what they're finding out is that you think they're asleep, which they are, but psychologically in their brain is waiting for the phone to ring. So how good of a night's sleep are they getting? Get it out of the room, shut it off, put it on the counter, put it in the charger.
Absolutely.
It'll be okay till morning, trust me.
I think I would have learned by now not to read like the FinCom email before I go to sleep at night. I should have waited till the morning. So that's going to be our challenge.
The email from the FinCom, isn't there anything you can spend all this money on?
So June 15th, 7 p.m., we're going to power down. Everybody.
That's cool.
To 7 a.m. on June 16th.
So you'll see all the lights in Milford get brighter.
That'll be the community challenge. It's going to be a Milford Unplugged Day.
But, I gave you my opinion. If I was to ask you, I'm new to Milford. How do I get the best education for my child?
Get involved. Bottom line.
No question asked.
Be a parent, not a best friend.
And, I remember because, obviously my parents came from Portugal. Back when I was a kid, they didn't really speak English. But I knew, I'll never forget, as to this day, Spruce Street School, I got a red 4 in conduct.
No.
Oh, my father put on his suit and his little hat, and he and my mother took the day off out of work the next morning and walked down to Spruce Street to find out. And that, I still remember it. Luckily, the teacher said, no, he just talks too much. There's no behavioral issue. But boy, did that have an impact.
Yeah.
To see that my parents cared enough.
Right.
That they showed up at my school. They took, we were a working class family. A day out of work
Sure.
was a lot of money.
Yep.
So to them, that's how they got involved.
Right.
And that's, I really believe that, the school councils are one of the best ways to really get an appreciation for what's available for your child.
Well, I think what's important, Al, what you just mentioned, when your children see you get involved, that you're involved in their education, they want to do a good job. They want you to be proud of them because you're taking the time out of your busy schedule to get involved in their life. And they see that. That's what's important.
And even if they can't come to, you mentioned the school council, PTO, as you get to the secondary level, the various booster, after prom, or the Milford Athletic Boosters, or the Parents for Music group. But even if they can't come to any of those meetings for whatever reason, we have the family portal. Assuming they have technology access, go online. If you don't know how, email me. I'll get you set up. Check your child's grades. Watch how you can see everything, all their homework assignments, quizzes, tests, it's in there. And then ask your child, say, I noticed you got an 80 on your science test. That'll change things because they know you're watching. You've got to.
And even if you don't have direct access, Miss Sue down at the library, Sue Edmonds made a big push. And again, we invested money in improving the infrastructure.
Sure.
So that people who don't have access readily at home, you can go down to the library and get on the portal.
Absolutely. Right. And really, call my office and say, hey, Bob, I really want to see my daughter's doing it. I don't have can you help me? In a second. I'll get the information printed myself. I'll drive it to the house. However we can get parents engaged in our schools.
It's a shame he doesn't care about the kids, isn't
it? That's what we need. We need to be partners in this operation, not just the teachers.
So we got a minute. Woodland.
Yes.
Moonscape. I see big hole.
Yeah.
How's it coming?
It's coming along well. It's coming along well. It's going to be fantastic when it's done. It's going to be a beautiful school. It's going to have the latest technology in it. It's something the town of Milford, again, we talk about this every time you and I get together, Al. It's another project in the town of Milford that people, the Milfordians, should be proud of. You have the Woodland School. We were talking about this the other night. You got the Woodland School going. You got the youth center going. You got the hospital going. You got Consigli Construction getting ready to start a new building on Summer Street. These are exciting things that are going on in our community. It's so nice to see it, you know, and be part of it.
And now we're going to have new technology investments?
We are. Yeah, we're very excited about that, getting fiber running to all of our schools, increase our bandwidth, our capacity for kids to engage in this, what they're used to. You know, you can't just, you know, I talked about the unplugged day, but you can't just come to school and all of a sudden put all that away. You rely on it. That's how you network. It's how we all network and talk and communicate and get facts at our fingertips.
Well, I remember you started years ago with updating the media center.
Right.
Because so many kids would go in and hit the keyboard and listen to the computer going, I think I can, I think I can.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you did a wholesale lease to upgrade that.
That's right.
Yeah. And you know what else, Al, real quick, because I know that people should realize, if people ever have the opportunity to come into the high school, come into the TRC, and see the equipment that this station has put up there for school committee meetings and any kind of televised meeting, we were looking at it the other night. It's state of the art. And you know, it's here in this community. This station bought into this community and is helping.
You know, and as always, let me wrap this up by saying any parent who has the opportunity, and I know a lot of times, especially with single parents, I've always been amazed because I had 2 daughters and there was my mother, my darling bride and I, so it was 3 against 2, and we could barely keep up with their schedules. But if you have the opportunity, go to the schools. Just make an appointment. Go to open house. Just get in there and talk to the teachers. Use the portal. If you've never used the portal, call up, and as Bob mentioned, he'll find somebody to help you so you get a good understanding of what's available. And if you can, God bless, get involved. It was the best thing I did, one, for me. I'd love to say I just did it for my kids, but it really did help me understand how, as my father put on his little hat and his suit and went down to see what he could do, you know, it had a lasting impression. And when your kids see you involved, we may not give them enough credit for noticing these little things, but they know. So as always, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to the 6 loyal viewers, may God bless, and may tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Thanks.
Too long since I've been